Hello, and welcome to 24/7 News. My name is Kenny, and I'll be hosting this episode tonight on Current Affairs. The topic of today's episode is regarding the world that we live in, presenting many diverse habitats for bacteria to grow. I'm sure you'll be entertained by our three special guests discussing the more extreme environment that house certain types of bacteria and how they survive. Our first guest is Dr. Hash, who will enlighten you on the effects of oxygen concentration for microbial growth.
I'm going to talk to you about the effect of oxygen concentration on the growth of various types of bacteria. Now, we know how important oxygen is to all living organisms, and it's very essential towards microorganisms such as bacteria. So now the importance of oxygen to the growth of an organism correlates with its processes. With the processes it uses to conserve energy. Now, almost all energy-conserving metabolic processes involve the movement of electrons through a series of membrane-associated electron carriers called an electron transport chain, or the ETC. For chemotrophs especially, an externally supplied terminal electron acceptor is critical to the functioning of the ETC. In many cases, the terminal electron acceptor is oxygen. So there are 5 different types of growth with the effect of oxygen on bacteria. The first one is the obligate aerobes, where only aerobic growth is used, so oxygen is required, and the growth only occurs in high concentrations of oxygen. Facultative anaerobes, both anaerobic and aerobic growth is utilised, and the growth is best where oxygen is present but occurs throughout the tube. Obligate anaerobe is only anaerobic growth, so the growth ceases in the presence of oxygen. For the members of the genera Bacteroides, Clostridium and Methanococcus, oxygen is toxic, and they're usually killed in the presence of oxygen. Strict anaerobe Porphyromonas gingivalis lives in the mouth, where it grows in the anoxic crevices around our teeth. Aerotolerant anaerobes are only anaerobic growth as well, but the growth continues in the presence of oxygen. Enterococcus facilis, which is an opportunistic pathogen, causes urinary tract infections and grow equally well whether oxygen is present or not. And finally, microaerophils, where there is only aerobic growth, but can grow in low concentrations of oxygen. And the foodborne pathogen Campylobacter jejuni are damaged by the normal atmospheric level of oxygen, which is usually around 20%, and requires oxygen levels in the range of 2 to 10% for growth. Now, almost all multicellular organisms are completely dependent on atmospheric oxygen for growth. So a microorganism must be able to protect itself against reactive oxygen species, or ROS, or it will denature. Neutrophils and macrophages, 2 of the most important cells in the immune system, use ROS to destroy invading pathogens. Many microorganisms possess enzymes that protect against toxic oxygen products. Thank you.
Now over to Dr. Katrina, who will be talking about high salt environment and extreme temperature ranges.
Thank you, Kenny. Life on Earth exhibits an extremely large adaptive capacity, and living organisms can be found even in the most extreme environments. Halophiles are extremophilic organisms that thrive in high salt concentrations. Halophiles are categorized as either slight, moderate, or extreme by the extent of their halotolerance to salt. Relatively few organisms have been able to survive in high salinity extreme environments. In order for halophilic organisms to survive, they use energy to exclude salt from their cytoplasm to avoid protein aggregation. They also employ strategies to prevent desiccation, drying out, through osmotic movement of water out of their cytoplasm. This increases the internal osmolarity of the cell. In the domain Archaea, the most salt-requiring microorganisms are found within the class Halobacteria. Halobacterium is an extreme halophile, salt-loving, as it requires high levels of salt for growth and structural stability. Halobacterium readily denatures in the absence of a high salt concentration and generally can't grow in concentrations of less than 10% salt. Halobacterium species can be found in places like the Dead Sea and any other waters with high salt concentrations. Temperature is one of the most important elements governing the growth of microbes. Some microbes can survive in extreme hot or cold environments and can be found in many different habitats on Earth. Microorganisms that thrive at relatively high temperatures, between 41 and 122 degrees Celsius, and very low temperatures of -15 and -25 degrees Celsius, are known as thermophiles, which are a type of extremophile. Many thermophiles are classified under the domain Archaea and can be found in varying environments, such as hot springs or by thermal vents deep on the ocean floor to permafrost in the Arctic. An example of a heat-loving extremophile species of Archaea is Pyrococcus furiosus. This bacterium is known for having an optimum growth temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, a temperature that would easily destroy most living organisms, and it is found within the thermal marine sediments. It has been found that this extremophile survives these conditions because its enzymes are generally more rigid in structure and its proteins are different due to adaptations over time. Planococcus halocryophilus is a cold-living extremophile. Isolated from high Arctic permafrost, it grows and divides at -15 degrees Celsius and can remain active and breathing at temperatures down to -25 degrees Celsius. You would expect these harsh conditions to be impossible for this bacterium to withstand, but thanks to modifications in its cell structure, cell function, and an abundance of cold-adapted proteins, it is possible. Changes in the bacterium's cell membranes help as a protective mechanism, and high levels of a compound that works like antifreeze stops the bacterium from freezing and also helps protect it from the salty environment in which it lives. Other cold-loving extremophiles called psychophiles have also been found living in freezing conditions and are most often bacteria, fungi, or algae. These hardy microbes have been found living beneath sheets of ice in Siberia and Antarctica, where temperatures range from -5 to -20. Thank you.
Now over to Dr. Mario, who will be presenting bacterium that live within high and low pH levels.
The optimal pH for most bacteria is between 5.5 and 8. These bacteria are referred to as neutrophiles. A pH outside this range would affect microbial growth, but this is not the case for acidophiles and alkophiles, who require an environment with an extreme pH in order to survive. Acidophiles grow best at a pH below 2. Anything higher, their membranes will be destroyed. While these organisms require a low pH in order for their enzymes to function properly, they maintain an internally neutral pH so that acid from the environment doesn't denature their proteins. These organisms have adaptations in order to survive this extremely low pH. Some of them are membrane impermeability to protons, reduced pore size which regulates the amount of protons that enter, active pumping out of excess protons at a large number of genes that repair DNA and protein as they are commonly damaged in acidic environments. An example of an acidophile is Diabacillus acidophilus. It is a thermoacidophile, meaning a bacterium that likes both extremely hot and extremely acidic environments. Acidophiles can be found in environments such as sulfuric pools, areas polluted by acid mine drainage, and our stomachs. Alkophiles function best at a pH between 9 and 11. They live in environments such as playa lakes and carbonate-rich soils. They do this by also maintaining a relatively internal neutral pH. The cell wall protects them from the alkaline environment. It contains acidic polymers with a negative charge that absorb sodium and hydronium ions and repulse hydroxide ions. The cells pump these hydrogen ions across their membrane and into their cytoplasm. An example of an alkalophile is Bacillus hyalurans. It is a rod-shaped gram-positive bacterium found in soil.
Thank you for all our guests on today's show. We hope you found it interesting and informative. See you next time, and good night, Australia.